it takes something special to win a major championship. You have to sometimes draw deep down inside yourself and even surprise yourself as to the things that you're doing. But you have to persevere, and you have to have a lot of patience. David and I first met back in 1968 at a junior golf tournament in Zimbabwe, what was then Rhodesia. When he got to about 17, he turned professional, and a lot of us were still finishing off school, and Dave was a particularly bright pupil, but he wanted to further his life in golf. He's a pretty useful player. You know, the fact is, I think he just enjoyed teaching more. When I first went to see him in America in 1982, I was running into a lot of problems with my game. I had the ability to play well for short periods of time, but I never had any consistency. In fact, only 3 months after first working with him, I very nearly won the British Open. And I think had I had 6 or 7 months working with him, I probably would have. You know, when you're going to change your swing and go into new ground, so to speak, you really have to put a lot of trust in the person that you're going to work with.
Mick, we have an interesting location for an instructional video.
Yeah, this is the kind of place that I'm sort of was familiar with before I came to see you, Dave.
Oh, thanks. I think on this tape what we're going to cover is a lot of faults that good players have, and we've worked on them ourselves, haven't we, over the years?
Well, not only for the good players, Dave, you know, a lot of the things that we've worked on over the last 12 years, I've applied to the amateurs.
Has it been that long?
Believe it or not.
Seems about 20.
But a lot of the stuff that we've worked on, I've applied to the amateur partners that I play with in pro-ams, and also my friends who I play with, you know, in my weeks off, and I think it's going to help just about everyone.
Well, all the good players and tour players that have come to see me, and I've helped in some way, I've got a lot of feedback from them, and we've found certain things that keep cropping up, and these are the things we're going to try to put over on this video, and a lot of the things that we've worked on. And so it's going to help the good player, but it's also going to help the average golfer get to that next level, improve their ball striking, and give them some of the secrets that we haven't let out before.
One of the things is we all have the same bad habits. You know, when I say that, we tend to do the same things over and over again, and even though we think we've got them beaten, we actually go back to them and they creep back in. So I'm sure that people are going to find that in some of the drills and that we've done, we're going to find something that's going to help them, and if they can just stick with it and persevere, don't just go for 1 day or 2 days and try it, but if you try it over a period of 3 or 4 weeks, you'll see that it'll creep into your game and it'll really help you.
Let's talk about the number one fundamental and probably the number one fault that I see with many golfers is the grip, because obviously if you don't get your hands correctly set on the club, you're going to hit a lot of poor shots, even though you might have a pretty good swing. Right, now, the thing that I see mostly with many players is the fact that they grip the club too much in the palm. Now, I've just hijacked this glove from one of these players that has a poor grip. I promise you it's not my glove. And we can see the wear up here, and that's simply because the fact the club is too much in the palm, and there's a lot of motion, a lot of movement with the club during the swing.
Right.
And this is very, very common, and big problem is unless you set your left hand, and particularly your left hand on the club correctly, you're not going to be able to use your hands correctly, not going to be able to get the wrist action right, and causes a whole host of bad shots. So let's have a look at your left hand and see how you position it.
Well, one of the things that I've always tried to do, David, with my left hand is to hold the club parallel to the ground right out in front of me here. I have the thumb going down the center of the shaft, a cup in the left wrist, and I can see 1, 2 knuckles.
Right, now let's just open this left hand and have a look where it is. And you can see it's across the palm, through that first finger here, and basically it is a palm grip, but it's also in the latter stages, or the lower part of the hand, in the fingers. So it's not purely a palm grip. And this will enable you, by gripping it in this position, and we can just see here, if I can just show the difference. So instead of having it running through there, it's now running there. It'll enable me to really get my wrist action working correctly. So important in a good golf swing.
Right.
What else do you feel? Do you feel any sort of pressure in maybe your last three fingers?
Well, I've always tried to grip it a little tighter in my last three fingers, and one of the reasons I come down the grip a little bit, not at the top here, is to make sure that I have these last three fingers on the club.
Right. Now the right hand, certainly the left hand's the most important, but the right hand, I see problems with many golfers who tend to grip it too much in the palm, and also the right hand's too far up the club. It's too short a grip, in other words.
Right, and what happens is, even though you may have a good swing, when you come in through to impact, the club face is going to turn because your right hand wants to go back to the square position, and it's going to close the club face. You're going to hook the ball. On the other hand, you might make a compensation and come through with your shoulders a little higher and hold on this way, and the ball is now going to go to the right.
Let's have a look at your right hand grip there and just see how you place it.
Well, as you can see, I've got it in the base of my fingers here, not too much in the palm like this, in the base of the fingers, and the lifeline here now comes over the top of the left thumb, and you can see the right thumb and forefinger, a little bit of a pinch.
Yeah, so see, the right hand looks like it sits fairly long on the club, and the hands, the whole key with the hands is to let them work as a unit. Remember, they control the club face, maybe involuntarily so. In other words, you don't consciously try to control it, but wherever your hands are, they're going to control the club face. I think it's a good point to mention too, there are a lot of great players who do have maybe what we would call substandard grips, but they hit so many thousands of balls and they're so talented that they are able to sort of compensate for it. But basically, I mean, good golf begins with a good grip, no question.
Absolutely.
Well, I know, Nick, posture is one of the things that you work extremely hard on, and it's something that for every player, no matter what their caliber, it's something they have to get right, because to a large extent, the golf thing is all about geometry and getting your angles right, and getting your angles right means getting it right at address.
Absolutely. One of the things that I notice quite frequently when I'm playing golf with, doesn't matter what handicap player and even some of the pros, is that we tend to have round shoulders at address, and even though our legs might be flexed nicely and everything, you notice that our shoulders now get rounded, and we start reaching for the ball. We get the weight on the toes a little bit too much, and of course when you come through and you swing through, you're going to lose your balance and fall forward a little bit.
Exactly. You know, keeping your balance is so important because you're swinging at speed. Remember, you've got to set yourself in a position where basically your back is in the right position, because your spine is so important in making a good solid turn and keeping the club on the right plane. So learning to get your spine set correctly is what it's all about. And good balance allows you to swing the club in balance and obviously creates a consistent swing path. I think the key really is to start from the ground up, making sure that probably your feet maybe about shoulder width maximum between the heels. Okay, that gives you a good base. Feet turned out slightly, and certainly feeling a little flex in the knees. And this is a good exercise. This is a great drill, putting the club on your thighs. What do you feel when you do that?
Well, I'm feeling the pressure, and I'm feeling that the thighs are working against the club shaft there, and that I feel that I'm nicely braced.
Right, so you feel some sort of resistance there. And the weight is hanging right underneath you. In other words, you don't want your weight sort of forward. A lot of people, what they tend to do, they bend forward here, especially good players, and they counteract themselves by sort of sticking their rear ends out too much. So although you want your tailbone fairly high, you want your lower back pretty straight, and also your chin up. And